There's a lot of discussion in white communities of racism just appearing now, just appearing after George Floyd. But the Battle of Lewisham happened just over 40 years ago, and it's testament to say that we've been fighting this stuff for a long, long time, and it still exists. There are a few things I want to say about everybody being here today. It's fantastic. It's great. It's another reflection of the joining of all people against racism. But what we all need to remember is that activism goes beyond the protest. Are you still maintaining your activism at the dinner table when your racist granddad, your mum, says something that discriminates against brown people? Are you still doing your activism for all black people when someone makes a comment about a dark-skinned girl and her being pretty for a dark-skinned girl? Are you still maintaining your activism at work when someone makes a comment, or you always see white people in your office? Are you doing your activism then? Are you doing your activism when you're sitting down with yourself and choosing to educate yourself, choosing a book over the TV, choosing to remain on the right side of history rather than being complicit? These are the things, these are the forms of activism that we need to take in our lives beyond the protest. Because in the days of social media, it's so easy to appear like a good person by taking a picture of yourself at a protest. But what are you doing when there's no camera? What are you doing when there's no one around you? Are you really being an ally? Are you really being true to black liberation? There are a number of things I could talk to the cows come home about black liberation and why it's so important. But I want to turn my attention to what is happening beyond the protest. And we're from an organisation called Justice for Black Lives. On Instagram, we're justice_for_black lives. And we are setting up a list of demands that is being co-signed by all of the black liberation groups in the UK. And we're touching on a number of issues, and I'll try and explain the reasons why they're so necessary. Firstly, we describe ourselves as an abolitionist group. And that's because we recognise that reform has got us here. Reforming things like enslavement allowed the government to put in things like prison labour in prisons and lock us all up. So we're not here for reform. Reform is what has got us to having body cams in the police only for them to turn them off, or for them to have training only for it to not work. So we are looking to abolish the police. But of course, that's not something that is going to happen overnight. It's not something that is smart to happen overnight. So we're calling for a divestment of police. Now what that means is taking some of the police budget and reinvesting that into our local communities. Because let's think about it. When someone is having a mental health crisis, why is it we have someone come to them who can potentially lock them up instead of a mental health professional? This is the thing that we need investment in. We need investment in our mental health services, our local mental health services. We need investment in social housing. Why? Because we know that crime is inextricably linked to poverty. When you improve the rates and conditions of someone's environment, they no longer need to turn to a life of crime in order to make their life better. When we improve education standards in local communities, young black men can see the prospects that they have for the future and don't have to see and turn to the easy fix of getting a pair of trainers by selling drugs. So we need to invest in our local communities. That also includes investing in women's refuges. I don't know if any of you know about Sister Space. Sister Space is the only black refuge for black women in this country. And a couple of weeks ago, we went to a protest because Hackney Council are trying to relocate them to an unsafe and unfit premises. We need more places like Sister Space. And specifically for black women, because black women do not call the police in situations of domestic violence because they know the brutalization that the men that they do care about may face when they make that call. Us not investing in our women's refuges specifically for black women is failing black women. The intensive care units. That's why black and brown people are disproportionately dying. And further to that, the reason why black and brown people are dying is because there's a trajectory of racism in these institutions, in hospitals, that teaches them that black people don't feel pain. So even when we are sick and we call for help, they can't hear us. And that's their racism blocking their ears. So we need to address and end medical racism. Another issue that we have is that our mental health services do not cater to the experiences of black and brown people. Generational trauma has been passed down through enslavement over generation and generation and is affecting us all now. The everyday PTSD experience of racism affects us every single day, and that is not catered to in the mental health services that we have currently. We need a mental health service in schools that looks after young people before they get to an older age where it means that they have no support around them. We also need to address the fact that black women are 5 times more likely to die after childbirth compared to white women. Giving birth should not be a death sentence, and this gap needs to be closed. And the reason why that is again because they cannot hear these women's pain. When black women know their bodies and recognize that there's a problem, these midwives and these doctors completely dismiss them. We'll give them, really bad surgery that might put them in further danger, and then, 5 times more likely, we're more likely to die. And this is something that really needs to be addressed. Another demand that we're looking for is to...
Is it working? Yeah. Ooh, okay. Another demand that we're also seeking is to transform the education system. So that means talking... It's really quiet. That means talking about Africa before enslavement. That means talking about the enslavement process and how brutal it was. It means talking about abolition, not from the perspective of William Wilberforce, but from the Haitian Revolution and Sam Sharp in Jamaica, who actually freed us. Because the result of teaching white children that white children saved black people is very present now. We have white saviorism present in our communities. Even in allyship communities, they think that they can save us. Especially with white feminism. White feminism teaches, white feminists to go into black and brown communities and teach them a better way of living. And that's not right. Feminism is about choice. It's about empowering people. And that's what we need to focus on. So we need to talk about enslavement, we need to talk about abolition, but we also need to talk about colonialism and post-colonialism and the tragedies that happened there, the indenture period. And we need to talk about the black civil rights movement, like the Battle of Lewisham that happened here in the UK. Because the reason why they haven't taught us these things is so that they can pretend like it didn't exist. That's why so many people think, where does the racism come from? Because they don't teach it in schools. And we need to teach this in a way that explains how and why Britain is racist today. Why things like the Windrush scandal was able to happen. Why things like the Grenfell scandal was able to happen. We need to be talking about racism and the trajectory of British history that explains why racism is so prevalent in British society. Another demand that we have is, oh my God, my head is gone blank. Tea?